I'm so happy to hear the MOU signed with the British Museum partly on technical support especially conservation models of the objects has begun, and that tools for this have been secured.
Doom TV.
Yeah, you do.
Empenisi ukru urefri ukru mehne abenya wo yira wo adwabo ase ena oman so a woni amamre ene amane no oman no enyo oman a eda so etiase mamemo akwaba emra Edum TV so sene onim no ahade amamre ne amane ho nsem ko a ene yeka eho dwuma ene yedie ene de nso yaba bepiem e wo menhia fikasiem woni me beya adwen se yewura efro sikadwa no emfinhia aduonunum enie enti yewura hyefa e de akai ne mfinhia aduonunum a watena adwaso se asantewura Asantehene na ene de dwumadi no niema ba miensa na wahyehye emu baako ne se watworo nwoma a efa yabakwasem ho a wo paw ho ntoma ene eno nso epa ho a niema kwesi broni ebesesa koi asante agudie asante niema eboy eda ye ho adie a obesesa koi no eno nso aba yewura hyefa na wada na die nso akire enti mamo akwaba kame ho na ne de nso let's take a tour na yenhwe sene niema ete ene dwumadi no edi eda so eye homecoming adversity and commemoration mamo akwaba kame ho na yenhwe ene de asante amamre ne amane a yewo ede ma I tell you yemfiri hankro no na homka enigye wasua de wahu amamre ene wamane medin ede Emmanuel community champion.
Special occasion here at the Manyhiaa Palace, somewhere in 2021, under the royal command of His Majesty Otumfuo Osei II, the Manyhiaa Palace Museum was closed to the public for renovation works again for another grand reopening of the Manyhiaa Palace Museum to the public as part of activities marking the silver Jubilee celebration of His Majesty Otumfuo Osei II. Asantehene has kept faith with consistency and tradition. If you are here, I'd like to invoke the blessings from the great architect of the universe upon our undertakings by inviting the Anglican Bishop of Kumasi, Right Reverend Oscar Christian Aboa, for the opening prayer.
Let us pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you this day for our lives, individually and collectively, as Asantehene and as a nation, Ghana. We equally thank you for seeing Otumfuo Osei II, His Royal Majesty, through thick and thin for the past 25 years as Asantehene. We thank you for the remarkable achievements that you have enabled our king to talk locally, nationally, and internationally. We praise you, Lord, for the courage, wisdom, fortitude, and the visionary spirit you have endowed Otumfuo, our king. As we celebrate this occasion to mark the homecoming of various treasured Asante Nigeria, which were taken by the British forces during the Anglo-Asante Wars in 1874. We invoke your presence to guide and guard us throughout the activities. We also pray that as we launch 2 books of museum management in Ghana and Africa, a history of Manyhiaa Palace Museum, we pray that you guide us in every aspect of it. Dear Lord, let the return of this regalia continue to deepen the bond of relationship between Asantehene and Ghana, and for that matter, and Great Britain. May the painful past continue to bring a future full of hope and glory. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
The Anglican Bishop of Kumasi, Right Reverend Oscar Christian Aboa. We thank you so much. Now, our distinguished chairman of this occasion has been the occupant of the silver stool of the Ashanti Kingdom for well over 28 years. He is an astute lawyer and the Vice President of the Ashanti Regional House of Chiefs and the Paramount Chief of Asante Mapon Traditional Area. Help me welcome Dasabre Osebonsu II, the chairman of this occasion. Now, before I invite our chairman, a round of applause for our chairman of this occasion. The occupants of the silver stool of the Ashanti Kingdom, well over almost 3 decades of leadership, leading the people of Asante Mapon. An astute lawyer, the Vice President of the Ashanti Regional House of Chiefs, and the Paramount Chief of Asante Mapon. Indeed, the occupant of the silver stool. Another round of applause.
A very good morning. A very good morning to all our distinguished guests and visitors who have gathered here now. I'm waiting for your response. Especially the members of our diplomatic corps and our distinguished guests who will be able to fly and join us over here. All this signifies that the respect, the basic respect that the diplomatic mission, and through them, our former overlords, of course led by the British and some of the European representatives of great museums who are gathered and come over here. It shows the astute respect you are called our illustrious Majesty and King, the King of the Second. Thank you for coming. My Royal Majesty, Otumfuo, in consonance with your directives, or perhaps may I term it as orders, I deem it the greatest pleasure of mine to humbly accept your orders to play the role of chairman for today's esteemed function. My gracious Majesty, I humbly, dutifully accept to chair today's function. And it's not a small function, it is no mean function. It is because for over 200 years ago, our illustrious kingship as a royalty, the royalty regalia. I don't want to use the terminology stolen as a sign of respect of my diplomats behind me over here, but rather 200 years ago, royalty regalia that got missing. My gracious Majesty, today is an auspicious day. So once again, I dutifully accept to serve as the chairman of this auspicious occasion. And fortunately for me, my astute son, whom we in Mampong, Butasi royalty, term as Sir Ivo, my own departed brother, one of his sons. And I'm happy to note that Ivo has followed the footsteps of my brother, who is departed to join our ancestors. He has been able to put down some notes, I would deem it as notes very well, to guide me of what I should outline this very afternoon. Because I must confess, I hesitate to take the wings out of the sail of our illustrious platoon force major summary that we all anticipate at the end of the program. I really hesitate, so I'll restrict myself and follow the outline aid memoir that my own astute and learned son has been able to put down for me. So once again, with the illustrious permission of my Majesty, I proceed, sir. Today is what is obviously one of the momentous memorials of Asante in the last 200 years. One of these will be why, the reasons why we are with you this afternoon, Your Majesty. What you initiated, the negotiations in May 2023, which has taken less than a year to bear fruits. It had been tried several times before in the last 50 years, but all to no avail. These objects of the Anglo-Asante Wars, particularly those of 1874, have finally come home. That is why I hinted that I hesitate to say stolen items, regalia of kingship and royalty have come back home. 100 years ago, your illustrious grandfather, Ajiman the First, made that ultimate sacrifice to save Asantes from total destruction, so that you and I can now speak to the people who love their kingdom and culture, who can claim boldly as we constitute the great ancestors of our forefathers, spearheaded by your own esteemed grandfather, who did not resist at a great cost and a great price, saying, deporting you to a foreign land. They agreed and graciously allowed the British to take us first to Cape Coast and then to another island, the name has just slipped me, then finally to where he ended up. But graciously as God permits, we were able, the British, to rescind their decision. And here you are, he was brought home. And we, the Asantes, at that time, we have astutely ancestors, astutely decided, irrespective of what the British termed as the return of, pardon my language, ordinary Kwakudia, the Manyhiaa of Kumasi. We looked at their faces. We did not respond. We did not argue. We did not quit. But in our innermost hearts, a brain, we knew that our own illustrious and gracious Asantehene has come back home. and we instantaneously accorded him the title. In his absence, my ancestors from the Botase royal line, Mambo, eventually, the colonial British installed us to hold up aloof a lot of the positions, which I'm happy now to realize my great ancestors never illegally decided to take over those positions. They insisted they were mere caretakers, though never confided to the British. And when our illustrious uncles returned, we graciously handed over Bantuma, name it, all the stools that we were looking after, and Nana has come back home. He was to determine what is to happen to those stools and what not. And I'm happy, as one of the ancestors now, that the role that Mampong, Botase Royals play can never be constituted nor classified as rebellious. And it is in the same vein that I am here, your own occupant of the silver stool, graciously serving you, sir, My Majesty. These objects of the Anglo-Asante Wars, particularly those of 1874, are finally come home. 100 years ago, your grandfather, to my brother the first, made that ultimate sacrifice to save Asante. That is what I elaborated upon. From total destruction, so that you and I today, as the descendants of that royalty, are still alive, and we still display our love and affection for the kingdom and culture of Asante. Homecoming is what it is, and a new cultural cooperation among people is what we have begun. Talking about for some time now, that we are here also to witness the launch of two very important books by historians of two separate generations. Incidentally, Professor McLeod, just now we were having some conversation, recollecting how the two of us, when you mandated me and sent me just 2 days notice, hey, Manyhiaa, here is the ticket, first class, board the plane, go over to Dallas, Texas, to represent me, to read my keynote address, because at that time Dallas Museum of Arts was organizing a program dubbed Dallas Exhibition, The Power of Gold, Asante Royal Regalia, from Ghana, organized by the Dallas Museum of Art, in April 15th to August 12, 2018. And it was there that I met my cloud professor. Literally, quote unquote, can be classified and called as one of the founding fathers of the great museum of Otumfuo. Behind us over here. Please, let's give him a hand. He is here today on the platform. And I'll take it from the agenda, but I'll leave it to our illustrious MC to highlight about it. And instantaneously, I focus all my attention to him before I began reading your illustrious keynote address. And I was watching him studiously. And I see him blinking or doing this, then I know I was on the correct line or two. Prof, I'm happy for us to renew our acquaintance. Homecoming is what it is. And a few cultural cooperation among people is what you have been talking about for some time now, our Otumfuo. But we are here also to witness the launch of two very important books by two historians two generations. Prof. Malcolm, I've already touched about him. And then, of course, my own son, an astute son. Ivor Manyhiaa, whose father, a research fellow at the Institute of African Studies, Lagos, but now departed to the ancestors. That's his son. And he used to be my brother, royal brother from Botasi, blue blood. So I can boldly assert that Ivor, you are my son. And I'm proud of you that you have stepped into the shoes of your father and continuing the historical aspects of Asante royalty. My son, Otumfuo graciously admire you and beautifully welcome you back home. My only hope is that the good job that you've started, literally heralding the royalty of Asante Kingdom overseas for expatriates who've never stepped over the shores of Ghana nor even traveled to the hinterland and meet Asante and taste and smell and participate in the glorious and esteemed custom of the great Otumfuo and Asante. You are heralding what Asante royalty is. Please, Ivan, continue. We admire you. And may the good Lord bless you. Science and technology, the last of which you Otumfuo chair. I've already talked about him. He was one of the founding fathers of Manyhiaa Palace Museum. I don't need to repeat the history, and then Ivor Manyhiaa will read the history of Manyhiaa Palace Museum, looks at museology in Asante in the last 200 years. It's personal as part of my royal blood. Don't need to elaborate. Whilst we will listen to what these two will tell us in their own words, on behalf of the Asantehene, I will want to again acknowledge the presence of partners and collaboration of this major event. To begin with, the British Museum, and particularly a member of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Chris Godson. May I please acknowledge you if you are around. Please let's give him a hand. Because I wouldn't use the word by accident of history, but by.
Another round of applause for our distinguished chairman of this great occasion, the Manyhiaa of Mampong traditional area. That's amazing. Thank you. Your Majesty, thank you. Your Majesty, Nana Chair, quickly indulge me to introduce some of our partners and collaborators here today with us. Indeed, you have mentioned some of them, but officially we are proud to have the member of the Board of Trustees of the British Museum representing this huge cultural organization that has approved the 15 objects on exhibition today. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's welcome Dr. Chris Godson. It's also a heartwarming to have the director of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, Dr. Tristram Hunt, representing one of the world's leading museum of decorative arts. We thank you so much for being here with us. We have an 8-member team of British Airways led by the head of sales, South Asia, Middle East, and Africa, Mr. Moran Piya. The IAG Cargo, which serve as the official logistic partner, has a team of 8 members led by the regional manager, Mr. Charles Ajay. Mr. Charles Ajay, we thank you. We appreciate your global services and your presence here. We are also grateful, which collaborated with the curators at the Manyhiaa Palace Museum, the British Museum, led by Julie Hudson, and later joined by Angus Peterson of the Victoria and Albert Museum. We thank you so much for your support. It will be remiss on my part not to acknowledge the critical role played by the John A. Kufuor Foundation. Our distinguished chair mentioned that. But the 2 production advisors for Homecoming, Adversity and Commemoration, Mr. Ivor Ajimandia and Professor Malcolm McLeod, you do have our greatest gratitude. A big round of applause for these 2 individual personalities. We thank you so much for your support and for your ideas, your creativity, and particularly for today. In today's event, we have 2 very important books to be officially launched, and we'd like to appreciate the presence of the publishers of the Ghanaian edition, Mr. and Mrs. Fred Labi, also here with us. We thank you so much. Your Majesty, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Director General of NADMO, Honorable Eric Nana Ajiman Prempe.
Distinguished guests, Your Royal Majesty, please accept my congratulations on behalf of the British Museum on this auspicious occasion of your Silver Jubilee. Thank you for hosting me and my colleague Julie Hudson and for welcoming us in such a friendly and open manner. It is my privilege to say a few words about the loan from the British Museum to the Homecoming exhibition, as well as to briefly speak about future partnerships and future collaborations. We were delighted to receive Your Royal Majesty at the British Museum last year, and I know my colleagues were very grateful for your visit. The relationship and connection between the Golden Stool of Ashanti and the British Museum is now over 200 years old. In 1817, the British diplomat Thomas Bowditch was similarly privileged to have been hosted here in Kumasi by the illustrious forebear of Your Royal Majesty, the Asantehene Osei Bonsu, who gave generous gifts to the British Museum. All of us here know well that the history of our nations has also involved conflict, with the warfare between the British Empire and the Ashanti Kingdom, which started in 1873 and 4, a painful historical episode, and one which significantly changed the course of history for the Ashanti Kingdom. Many of the collections on display in this new exhibition directly relate to that painful historical chapter. The British Museum is firmly committed to building productive and forward-looking relationships using these collections today. We thank Your Royal Majesty for his wisdom and leadership in fostering this strong partnership. We were delighted that the visit of Your Royal Majesty to the British Museum last year was the catalyst for signing a new memorandum of understanding between the Golden Stool and the British Museum. The MOU and the Manyhiaa Palace Museum itself reflects 50 years of collaboration and partnership. In 1974, Asantehene Apokawari II requested the repatriation of Ashanti gold from the British Museum. Malcolm MacLeod, then Keeper of Ethnography, came to Kumasi to explain that the provisions of the British Museum Act prevented the permanent removal of the objects from the collection. He stated that the British Museum wished to cooperate with the Golden Stool in exploring mutual areas for future research and scholarship, including a major exhibition on the Ashanti and developing a museum at the Manyhiaa Palace with training for museum staff. The Palace Museum we see today is the tangible result of our joint initiatives. We have come a long way in 50 years. The 1981 Ashanti Kingdom of Gold exhibition at the British Museum enabled a diverse range of visitors to learn more about the history, arts and culture of the Ashanti Kingdom in London. It subsequently travelled to New York. Through a series of initiatives between 2006 and 2016, we also collaborated on knowledge exchange programmes and training through the British Museum's Africa programme, which helped support training for the Manyhiaa Palace Museum staff and also provided opportunities for other Ghanaian colleagues. The new MOU provides the basis for enhanced cultural cooperation between the Manyhiaa Palace Museum and the British Museum. This loan is its first tangible outcome. The loan from the Ashanti collections of the British Museum has been developed in close collaboration and dialogue with His Majesty, the staff and advisors of the museum, including the director of the Manyhiaa Palace Museum, Iva Ajimandua, and technical advisor Malcolm MacLeod. The royal regalia is associated with ritual and ceremonial contexts within the Ashanti royal court and has been selected by the Manyhiaa Palace. Most notable amongst these objects is the Mupaponsuo sword, traditionally used by Ashanti kings to swear their allegiance to the Golden Stool. Amongst the objects selected is also a small gold ornament in the form of a looped harp. This ornament was one of the cast gold objects presented in 1817 to the British diplomat Thomas Bowditch during his visit to Kumasi by the Asantehene Osibonsu. According to Bowditch, they were intended by the Asantehene as gifts to the British Museum and serve as means of representing the wealth of the Ashanti Kingdom in London. We're looking forward to learning more about these objects from colleagues and members of the public in Kumasi as we continue our collaboration. As a museum, we are committed to widening access to all our collections, whether this is through our work back in London, online to global audiences, or by sharing the collection as loans, such as this one, to create new opportunities for engagement and understanding. The British Museum recognises the importance of these objects to Ashanti people, and since the 1970s there have been calls for them to return to Ghana. Their display enables people of Ghana to directly engage with these objects and their history in a new and important way that has not been possible before. We at the British Museum are wholly committed to continuing this relationship, building on this loan in a manner based on friendship, trust, mutual respect and a willingness to discuss. In this respect, I am delighted that during his visit to the UK in the summer, Your Royal Majesty will give a lecture at the British Museum focusing on Ashanti culture and heritage. The lecture will be introduced by the eminent writer and philosopher Kwame Anthony Appiah. It leaves me only to reiterate to you, Your Royal Majesty, our heartfelt congratulations on your Silver Jubilee, to thank you again for working in partnership with us and for inviting me here today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Victoria and Albert Museum in London, I extend my deepest congratulations and sincere gratitude for the invitation. We gather today in the presence of exceptional and beautiful objects that bear witness to the rich heritage and artistic prowess of the Asante people. These treasures, once looted by British forces in 1874, have rightfully found their way back to the Manyhiaa Palace Museum through a collaborative effort between our institutions. The journey that has led to this moment has been one of dialogue and mutual respect. It is a decades-long journey, but Your Majesty's official visit to London in May last year, where we met together to discuss a landmark cultural exchange and partnership, accelerated the process. It is no surprise that Your Majesty, an agent of peace and unity in Ghana, has also been a leader for healing and reconciliation internationally. I extend my deepest appreciation to your two technical advisors, Ivor Ajamandua and Professor Malcolm McLeod, whose tireless efforts have been instrumental in making this collaboration a reality. We're also immensely grateful to the Manyhiaa Palace Museum staff and associated experts, Julie Hudson from the British Museum and Angus Patterson from the V&A, for so generously sharing their knowledge and support. As director of the V&A, I'm filled with both a deep sense of responsibility and of pride. We acknowledge the very painful history surrounding the acquisition of these objects, a history tainted by the scars of imperial conflict and colonialism. We also recognize the enduring cultural, historical, and spiritual significance these artifacts hold for the Asante people. It is a true honor and indeed a highlight of the V&A's history to be able to support this homecoming exhibition and to see the Asante crown regalia on display in their homeland. These treasures have borne witness to the triumphs and trials of a great kingdom, and their return to Kumasi is a testament to the power of cultural exchange and reconciliation. Through this partnership, we've embarked on a journey of knowledge exchange, skill sharing, and mutual understanding, recognizing the invaluable contribution of the Asante people to the world's cultural heritage, as we shall hear from our colleague from UNESCO. The V&A remains dedicated, alongside the British Museum, to sharing its collections as widely as possible and embracing the opportunities for healing and reconciliation that such partnerships offer. Your Majesty, on this momentous occasion, we celebrate not only your remarkable reign, but also the resilience and achievements of the Asante people and the enduring power of cultural exchange. May this fabulous exhibition serve as a catalyst for further collaboration, mutual respect, and a deeper appreciation of the shared humanity and the culture of creative endeavor that binds us all. Thank you for inviting me here today, and once again, deepest and heartfelt congratulations on your Silver Jubilee, Your Gracious Majesty.
Majesty Otumfo and Nanamo Memamo Asia. Eye me ani jisye meka enenye edumadi noho. Mede insia AF UNESCO Obremo. Se Africanino eye nidi bere niina se epeisha nanamo AF4 ne ade asheman awasheshe Africa abakesem. esteemed authors, Professor Malcolm MacLeod and Ivor Ageman Adua, dear members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, the media, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate His Royal Majesty Antufo Osei Tututu for supporting the bold initiative to have the exhibition Homecoming Adversity and Commemoration and launch of 2 books, Images of Ghana by Prof. Malcolm MacLeod and An History of Manyhiaa Palace Museum by Ivor Ageman Adua. His Royal Majesty Antufo, standing here in this place rich with history, marked with time of the great civilizations of Africa, standing here in your presence as a testimony of the royal kingdoms that rule and reign in this great continent of Africa, only compares to us as representing the only institution in the United Nations organization that deals with culture and history and dealing with the history of Africa. We acknowledge how important this 25th Silver Jubilee that we have celebrating today means in the hearts and minds of young people, especially for the present generation in regard to the future. You are a testimony of what Africa used to be before slave trade and slavery. It was great kingdoms that surpasses many empires that were known in that time. And so for us, especially for the younger generation, we're looking into the future. We are inspired, but not only knowing what was Africa before then, but also you are a testimony of that great past and also an inspiration of the great future of what we all aspire to. So these books that tackle the issue of the complex nature of restitution in international global system and intellectual encounters between Asantehene, Osei Bosun, and British trader negotiator between and the implication of culture thereafter, as well as museum in Asante in the last 200 years respectively. I commend the 2 authors, as the chairperson of the moderator also highlighted, for throwing more light on Africa culture, history, and heritage. This is in line with the UNESCO General History of Africa project, which encouraging the narration of African history from an Afrocentric context that shows the contribution of Africa to global development and civilization. The refusal to recognize Africa as the possibility of creating original cultures posed itself as a challenge that only renunciation of prejudice and the renewal of method could have made possible to overcome. In the recent past, world history presented Africa only from the encounter of the continent with Europe, making this history appear as an appendix to European history. His Royal Majesty Antufo Osei Tutu, ladies and gentlemen, if after having conquered the land, the power and the labor force, the colonial system has resolutely worked to reconvert consciences and mentalities and to win them over its cause through school, education, language, the mode of life, administration, and the army, as quoted by George Harley, called the moral conquest. It is because he knew that the strongest is never strong enough until he has reigned over minds, cultures, and consciences. Colonization was above all a subtle but significant and systematic enterprise of cultural alienation. In the implementation of this vast design, the role played in history, science, education, and culture was decisive. His Royal Majesty Antufo Osei Tutu, this is why, as long as African history and education system have not been stripped down, rid of all the falsifications, distortions, and tendencies interpretation that they contain, it will never be able to reinvest in a new strategic vision and a chosen approach that is required for its development and to achieve its optimal effectiveness. Because we can only truly love what we know well. The commitment and motivation of African civilization in favor of their continent and their conscious solidarity with the other people who compose them undoubtedly depend on the positive perception that they have of their past, the value and relevance of their culture, of which history and language constitute the basis and substance. It follows from the above that for Africa to repossess themselves, as the former Director General of UNESCO said, Mr. Federico Mayor, occupy its place, it claims, in the current millennium, African civilization must, without further ado, reconstitute their civilizational heritage. That's exactly your Highness you're doing. In all its authenticity, revisit it, make it discovered, make it known and loved, because it represents not only their irreplaceable contribution to the heritage of the universal, but also, above all, it is the nourishing sap from which the elites and all social strata must drink if they want to find the best answer to the challenges of the present and those of the future, on one hand, and on the other hand, the strength, vitality, and confidence necessary to participate in debates where the destiny of the world are sealed, as once said by Cheikh Professor. His Royalness Majesty Otumfuo Osei-Tutu, ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO clearly states that the return and restitution of cultural properties is central to the 1970 Convention, and its duty is not only to remember, but to fundamentally safeguard the identity of peoples and to promote peaceful society whereby the spirit of solidarity will be strengthened. Thus, the 1970 Convention aligns with the Sustainable Development Goal defined by the United Nations 2030 Development Agenda. There are more to be identified and returned, as my predecessor have spoken, and return to Ghana and continue to push for their return. We may also look at and resolve internal challenges around cultural property taken during local wars or conflicts. I commend Ghana for its effort in championing the return, reparations, and restitution agenda for Africa and its diaspora. These cultural properties are more than just objects. They go to the heart of the identity of the community they were taken from. I hope the return of the current cultural property will encourage the Ghana team to pursue their objectives with renewed vigor, urgency to come up with a roadmap involving stakeholders such as customs, the police, artists, the civil societies, traditional authorities, academia, students, media, and the general public, but above all, under His Royalness guarding eyes. Policy documents such as the Culture Policy and the Multi-Stakeholders Heritage Strategic Framework of the Ghana Heritage Committee must also provide the necessary backing for the return, reparation, and restitution agenda. I hereby therefore once again congratulate His Royal Majesty Otumfuo Osei-Tutu and his team again for organizing this historical set of events. And Your Majesty, you can count on UNESCO, and I will make personal commitment that my stay in this blessed country will be to ensure that cultural development and social cohesion under your guiding eyes will meet successful endeavor in the years to come. Medase. Thank you.
A little longer here in Kumasi, because if you stay here for 2 weeks, you will not deliver your speech in English again. Yeah, that's it. More Bakala. We have two important events today. the book launch, and the exhibition. And you have the privilege of getting the book and at the same time entering the first time for so many years the Manyhiaa Palace Museum.
Great Empire exhibition at Wembley in 1924 and 1925. The village became the home to a number of Asante, and millions of people saw them and saw that exhibition. Another major exhibition was Asante Kingdom of Gold at the British Museum and subsequently in New York. More recently, there was a major exhibition, as you will have heard, at the Dallas Museum of Art, opened by the Manyhiaa, and Otumfuo wrote an introduction to the book that accompanied that exhibition. There have been in many parts of the world many other exhibitions about Asante. The sad thing, the terrible thing, is they were all organized by outsiders. I hope that the next one will be created by Asante scholars. The third section of the book deals with future developments in museums. Some of the things I suggested then are already occurring. For example, museums are scanning objects in their collections and sending the computer code to people outside the museum in any part of the world who have access to a three-dimensional printer. Those people can use the code to make a replica of the museum object. This will open up museums in unprecedented ways. The middle section of the book deals with the contentious and complex matter of restitution. When I wrote it, I could not have imagined that we would be here today celebrating the homecoming of material looted in the 19th century. These things have come back because of the initiative, the persistence, and the diplomacy of Otumfuo. But as you have heard, the relationship between the British Museum and Asante man goes back a long way. In 1974, Asantehene II wrote to the British Museum asking for the return of material taken away in the Sakranti War. I came to Kumasi and explained that due to the laws which govern the activity of the British Museum, permanent removal of items from the collection is not possible. But the British Museum wanted to work in any ways open to it to form a constructive relationship with the Golden Stool. That pact was made. One result was the exhibition, Asante Kingdom of Gold, which was opened by Asantehene II in London and then in New York. There were joint training programs created for museum curators, and we participated in the creation of the museum here. That was a start. Restitution, which we celebrate today, is important. Of course it is. But it should not be an end in itself. If it is treated just as something that must be done, and that is the end of it, we have wasted a great opportunity. I believe that restitution should be the starting point for the creation of new and much stronger relationships between museums. There are huge disparities between the wealth and power of major museums in Europe and North America and those in countries which wish to have their material returned. This disparity must be decreased. It is now time for those richer museums to contribute to the growth of less wealthy museums. In my book, I suggest various ways in which this can be done. Firstly, each museum should treat the other as an equal, not as a superior and an inferior. Equality is essential. I believe there are simple things that can be done to improve the situation. For example, staff from each museum should be exchanged and work in the other museum, not just for 3 or 4 weeks, but for a year at least. This way they will learn about the problems, techniques, needs of the other museum and will share knowledge.
We're still celebrating the 25th anniversary of His Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. Monday, the 6th of May, will be the King's birthday. Thank you. A round of applause for him. The distribution will be very difficult indeed. The grand derby will be on the 12th of Loveless Pramper. Both locally and internationally. And I thank you for picking up the first one. We're talking about the history of Manyhiaa Palace Museum and the images of Ghana. This is a homecoming celebration, an exhibition, adversity, and commemoration. Thank you so much. Now you have a gracious handshake with the celebrants. A big round of applause, please. For Manyhiaa, who also doubled as the chairman of the Otumfuo Osei Tutu II Foundation, Nana Professor Ohineba Abuakye Ajayi Wahine II. A round of applause, please. Emeritus Professor of Orthopedic Surgery, and he is the board chair of Otumfuo Osei Tutu II Foundation, Otumfuo Ohineba Abuakye Ajayi Wahine II. Thank you. Now the third on the list is the Manyhiaa or Sampa traditional area, Nana Samba Jamfla II. A round of applause. You travel all the way from German North, in the Bono region, Jafla II, majestically walking to Nana, the people of Sampa are so grateful for your loyalty to Asantehene. We thank you so much. Is another true son of Manyhiaa Palace. And he has been working around, very hardworking, smart, confident, and intelligent engineer Nana Poku Ajiman. A round of applause for Engineer Nana Poku Ajiman. I recall when we met at the Kwara University of Science and Technology for Otumfuo Composers Competition. He donated 40,000 Ghana cedis to the winners, who eventually came all the way from Tamale. Thank you, Nana. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your loyalty. Engineer Nana Poku Ajiman, thank you. He's also a member of the planning committee. Next, to pick up a book, the former MP for Obuasi, Honorable Edwin Inin. A round of applause for the former Member of Parliament, Honorable Edwin Inin. Honorable Eric Nana Ajiman Prempe, the Director General of NADMO. Your Majesty, he whispered into my ear that on the 12th of May, where we will have the Grand Deba, Professor Kwame has been a publisher, is an educationist, a former Member of Parliament, and the proud son of Asantehene, Honorable Dr. Joseph Kwa, and enjoying the king. Our distinguished Chairman Nana Dasabre Osebonsu II, Samahene, Dominasehene, Asompohene, Achimehene, this museum, Dr. Chris Gosden, Julie Hudson of the British Museum, Director of the Victoria and Albert Museum, Dr. Tristram Hunt, Angus Peterson of the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Deputy British High Commission, the Head of UNESCO, Mr. Edmond Bukala, and the wife, Mrs. Bukala, Head of Sales, South Asia, Middle East, and Africa, the Royal Commissioner of the Manyhiaa Palace Museum, by His Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, as part of activities market, the 25th anniversary of His Majesty. We shall all be waiting for the gracious speech of His Majesty after the talk.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this building, from where I share these talks with you this afternoon, will be 100 years next year. Though originally built as a residential palace for my granduncle Prempeh I in 1925, it was turned into a museum by my brother Otumfuo Opoku II in memory of the adversities and sacrifices that Prempeh I endured with those around him, divisional and sub-divisional chiefs, courtiers, some of whom lost their lives in Kumasi and across the Indian Ocean and the Seychelles Islands. There are two emotional photos in the exhibition of his initial journey to the coast with hundreds of Asantes who said they would not let him travel alone to exile. This exhibition, the first since the museum was established nearly 30 years ago, is part of the terms of negotiations with the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. I'm therefore very happy to see Dr. Chris Gosden and Dr. Tristram Hunt, who promised they would come when all had been cleared and the objects are home with us. I'm so happy to hear the MOU signed with the British Museum partly on technical support especially conservation models of the objects has begun, and that tools for this have been secured. That out of this, a visiting curatorship has also been agreed upon. We have just heard what some of the partners had to say and the backing of multilateral institutions such as UNESCO. We have also heard from two people appointed to handle the negotiation issues, Professor Malcolm MacLeod, whose book, Images of Ghana, and Ivor Adjumandia's A History of Manyhiaa Palace Museum has been launched in additional but specific literature of museology in Asante in the last 200 years. We all accept that there are universal values of culture which attract people from different ethnic groups, nationalities, and beliefs. The reactions of these objects coming home were ample evidence of this. But we must also realize that cultural changes and bereavement are part of human nature, and to that extent, contemporary artistic creations cannot escape from these human preferences, sometimes also generational. Previously, many art historians discarded the idea of African art, yet the black race came with its own forms, whether from Southern Africa or the eastern side of the continent. That denial was not surprising under implantations of external cultures. What was also not surprising was again the denial that art markets and auction houses existed in parts of Africa, including Asante in the 1800s. If these have been proved wrong with research and scholarship, including art histories of the continent now taught in universities, home and abroad, there's a current challenge we all also need to look at. Most of the returned objects in this exhibition were made by Asante royal artisans, or the group we call Jumfo, who still practice their trade and have been doing so since Asante was founded. Many are resident artists. It took time before they were licensed to go commercial and into the open markets. Now the world is an open place and trade and business knows no boundaries. It's the market that determines many of the choices we make and the things we buy. If there's freedom from royal artisans to be liberal from palace impositions and participation to participate in the open markets, it brings some personal wealth or income for families and should absolutely be encouraged. There is a reverse side that could be worrying. Markets are markets, and those who invest in African art these days do so and trade in futures. There are many galleries springing up in modern African cities, and there are reviews of contemporary African art in major media that include CNN, Bloomsbury, CBS, SABC, of young African artists who have graduated from our schools within the continent and abroad. Many of their products are sadly not in African galleries for sale, and are easily bought by non-African with interest in them or to be branded and marketed for bigger profits.
Sure.
It's the markets. What can we do to save some of the creative energies of especially contemporary artists? Is some of the exhibition objects were taken forcibly at war and sometimes at peace. The ones that are being produced and brought from Africa today are at the dictates of the markets.
Zero.
From the LC Palace in France to homes of prime ministers of Europe and middle and upper class individuals. These artworks are precious objects that would be worth millions in the future. Will many Africans have to travel to see these in future? I asked the Manyhiaa Palace Museum to design a project to support traditional art in Ghana. We will be collaborating with the KNUST College of Art and some of our partners, including the British Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the British Airways, and IAG Cargo to support this. In 10 years from 2025, it would institute 3 prizes a year in traditional fine arts. The works of major finalists will not only be purchased for the upcoming Contemporary Court Art Museum, so we can help retain some of the creative art products in this country. When I next travel to England in the coming months, I'm told it's in July, I'll be meeting some of these Ghanaian artists, painters, goldsmiths, and see how we can collectively, and working with some of the royal or traditional art groups, do this.
Sure.
When the modalities are set up, we will also work with private galleries in the country to at least retain some of the productions. It is not always that we have to solicit for things we can strive and do for ourselves.
Sure.
I hope that over the days and the months ahead, you'll find comfort and be inspired by some of the creativities of our forebears. The exhibition that we are witnessing today has been through negotiations from my predecessors, where Prempeh I, when he returned, requested for these our artifacts to be brought back.
Sure.
Prempeh II, my uncle, also broached that idea in 1948.
Sure.
My brother, Utumfo Pokwari, also came up with this idea again, and then I come here now standing in front of you to also negotiate.
Sure.
Then in May, when I traveled, I brought the matter up again with the British Museum, and through that meeting, here we are with all these items being returned to us.
Sure.
We thank them very much. It is not the end. I know we still have so much to do, but this is the first phase of it.
Yeah.
And the agreement is for us to keep it for 3 years and then renew it for another 3 years.
Sure.
Interestingly, people were arguing that, but these things are for us, so why are they loaning it to us? Unfortunately, there's a law in Britain, law of antiquity, which even doesn't allow them to move these items out of the country. But for the sake that they believed in us, and that we went in for negotiations and were able to convince them that we would display that for our people to also see it. The items that came back virtually is the soul of the people of Ashanti.
Zero.
We are displaying this for you to see that the items that were stolen, looted in 1874, not all of them has returned, but that what we have here still embodies the soul of Ashanti.
Sure.
And I believe within the period that they are being displayed here, you make an effort, everybody, to come in and visit, to see it yourselves, to believe that yes, we have this. Yes, these were created by our own artisans. Yes, we ask ourselves, are we able to do that in this modern day?
Sure.
In those days, in 1874 and early on, if we had artisans who have not been to universities being able to create this, why can't we do this now?
Sure.
So that is also a challenge to our students, that's a challenge to our young people and all that, to be able to be creative enough to be able to design these artists. So the spirit is back here, and then everybody should please visit. The Mpomponsio sword is there, the Nchemche is there, everything up there are all being displayed for you to see that yes, as we said, when they ransacked here, yes, it was true. Yes, they are still keeping our artifact, but we also are happy that they've agreed to return some of these to us for display for our people to see it. Thank you. Let us accept that today is a day for Ashanti. It's a day for the Black African continent, that the spirit that we bore and share is back with us again today. Thank you very much.
His Majesty will lead the delegation to the exhibition hall. And afterwards, His Majesty will host